Hello there, welcome back to another episode of Cloud with Chris. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you for joining in another episode here, and we've got another guest on the show, and this one is going to be a bit different, I think. I'm very intrigued and excited to see how this one goes because the guest I have today is Erin Davies, and Erin is a very, very long friend that I've had for, I'm sure we'll figure out how many years when we get talking in a moment and start reminiscing, going down memory lane. But I think this one's going to be quite a fun one, so grab some snacks, drinks, whatever you want to do, because I think this might just be entertaining more than informative or anything, so we'll see how it goes. And let's go ahead and bring Erin onto the show here. Hey Erin, how are we doing?
Hi. 2010, I think.
2010. I was going to say 10 or 11 years, so wow.
That's a while.
That is a long time. That is a long time. So I guess then 10, 11 years, we should probably tell people how we know each other and give a bit of background about you as well.
I actually, to my shame, don't quite remember the first time we met, which would suggest it was a drunken escapade at the student bar at some point.
Or council.
Or maybe the drinks after council.
I think it would have been that.
So you and I met at some point in your first year, which would have been my second year at Warwick University, when we both got involved in student politics. So it was some point during that year would have been our first interaction, and I've kind of stuck around ever since.
Yeah. I'm trying to get rid of you. No, I'm joking. But no, we've kept in touch all that time, and we were just catching up right just before going live. It's been a while since we've really had a chance to properly hang out and chat as well, because obviously everything going on in the world at the moment, but hopefully we can change that soon enough and get some normality going. But of course, the show isn't just, let's bring Chris's friends onto the show and chat, right? Even though that would be really fun, and I would have a lot of fun doing that. I think the other thing as well, of course, is it's Cloud with Chris. We talk about technology, we talk about DevOps and all these things, and I think this is maybe why we wanted to talk as well, because I think there's some great insights and things you can share as well.
Yeah, Erin Davis, Agile Coach, doesn't fully understand how the cloud works.
And today we're going to demystify... No, we're not. That's not today's episode. But what we're going to do is I think we're going to talk about a few different areas, right? Because we spoke a moment ago that we met at university, and I did computer science at university, but you did not. You did something different.
No, I'm a failed lawyer is my favorite line. So I did a joint degree in law and sociology at Warwick, and then spent a year working in the Students' Union as a student sabbatical officer or student rep, or various people know it in various different terms. And as I was coming to the end of that year, I had a moment of, oh God, I don't have a job, and started applying for graduate schemes and companies that I knew were like the feel of, and applied for one at John Lewis. I went, John Lewis, great organization, love the ethos, everyone's a partner, la 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 la. So got through all of the interviews and got to the final stage of interviews. At that point, I think this was stage 5, when someone came in and went, congratulations on getting to the final stage of the IT graduate scheme. And little voice in the back of my head went, oh God, it's IT. Up until that moment, I hadn't realized it was an IT scheme.
Excellent.
It was gloriously vague as a job description, and it was like technology leadership something or other, and I genuinely thought it would be buying and merchandising. Gotcha. Buying the stuff that was sold in stores.
Gotcha.
It was not. And despite having no background in IT and
we have to come back to that one as well in a minute.
Yeah.
But carry on.
No background in IT, actually fairly cursed when it comes to IT. No preparation for an IT interview. I got onto the grad scheme and subsequently spent the next couple of years working in various different parts of the John Lewis Tech Department. And then fell into Agile, and now here I am.
Awesome. And I think one thing, it would be very rude of me not to call out while we're here talking about, again, our potted history, right, is the amount of times that I've had text messages or phone calls or random smoke signals, whatever it may be, of requests for help, of random technology thing is broken, and not being able to understand how on earth you managed to break something.
I think my favorite memory of you, me, and all things tech was whenever you realized I had one of the Windows smartphones, and you went, took it off me, started bashing about on the screen, and then handed it back, and I looked at it and nothing had changed. I'm like, what have you done? You're like, I've put all the beta versions on it because if anyone's going to break it, it's going to be you.
Pretty much.
And I still to this day get emails from the Windows Insider program, and I don't know what they're about, and I don't know how to unsubscribe.
We could take a look at that. I feel like I've just enrolled myself for more tech support there.
Yes, you have. Because I'd forgotten about that until this very moment.
There we go. That's all right. There's an unsubscribe button at the bottom of the emails.
Yeah, and it takes me to a login page that I can't get into.
Oh, you had issues, didn't you, with your login account at one point as well?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Anyway, we'll come back to that when we're off recording. I said this one was going to be fun. I think we both knew. Yeah. So, bringing us back on track. So you kind of stumbled then into your career in IT, and I think you mentioned, and I think it's such a perfect way to introduce a talk title if you haven't already called it that way, something like "A Failed Lawyer Stumbles into IT" or something like that. I think would make a great talk title. I might even have to change the title on on the episode now as well to that. But how have you kind of found that? Because I guess you've gone from doing law to kind of doing the sabbatical officer work and the student politics into IT. How was that as a shift?
It's been quite interesting looking back over my career. What was fun for me was, not that you can tell right now, is I'm just casually hanging out in a t-shirt, but I'm the sort of person that likes wearing like big flouncy skirts and dresses and heels because I'm 5'2" and I need all the advantage I can get.
I can confirm all of the mentioned.
So I would have moments where I would be in the head office building on the graduate scheme and about to get into the lift, and everyone just assumes I was going to the fashion floor, so pressing the floor for me. I work in IT, and they give me this look, and I get it a lot. I had a housemate once try and tell me I didn't work in IT. That was hilarious, as I'm sort of sitting there going, no,
I do.
I do. I definitely sit on that floor, and that's definitely where I got paid, and this is definitely my job description. And it took about 10 minutes to convince them that I wasn't, in fact, as I thought I was going to be, in the buying department. And yeah, I've noticed, like, it depends which circles you go to. So I love a conference, so I'll go to conference talks and events, and I'd hang out with female developers and just watch as people just talk over the top of them. This woman knows more than you, so you should just So it's been really interesting and really varied. I think anytime now that I've moved away from the technical, not that I was particularly technical, but now that I've moved away from the technical stuff, I have a less of that to deal with. I'm an Agile coach, and inherently that's about people and dealing with people and trying to understand how they work and how they tick. And for whatever reason, I'm seen more legitimately in that space than some of my friends and colleagues who are incredibly gifted technically, but aren't men.
And I think in the beginning there we made light a little bit of the going into the lift and getting the button press view, but let's be fair, right? There is a very real and very, very unfair world in this kind of industry where it is very male dominated and it is very male oriented as well in that sense, I guess. And it's not good. And I think this is one of those things where you know me, right? I'm someone who will try to do what I can to help and advocate and do all those things, but I don't live it. So I don't, to a degree, don't get it, right? I don't understand and have that empathy to a degree. So for anyone kind of listening who doesn't quite get it, what do you think maybe some of the things they could do to maybe try and help be an advocate in that space, let's say?
So there's a lot of big sweeping changes that need to be changed in the industry, and that I'll be honest is very, very hard to change, because it's things like women have really struggled when they hit around about our sort of age and they want to think about having families and then leaving and coming back, and technology moves so quick that 2 years out to raise a kid means a lot of skills potentially missed. So all of that needs to be dealt with policy and HR change. You as an individual in the room that you can implement immediately is, how often do you see your female colleagues being talked over or having their ideas stolen, or the most controversial individual action is talking very publicly about your salary. And this is a huge stereotype, but as a gender, where we are not very good at negotiating starting salaries, which then puts us at a disadvantage. So if we know that everyone at our level who does the same work as us is getting paid 10, 15K more, then that gives us more information when we go for promotions or change your jobs, etc. So that's one of the biggest things that people can do is start, and we should all do it. I should do it because I'm a white person and have my white privilege. So anyone who's not needs to understand what I get paid in the same way as you win privilege bingo. So it's really useful for you to tell us.
I mean, I come from Wales, but I joke. I know.
Team, so.
Yeah, no. And I think that's something maybe just for anyone who is listening in, maybe just to take away, and not saying necessarily you have to go and change the world. By no means is it a one-person band of suddenly changing the world, but I think every person can take their own few steps to try and make a change and try and do something different. Like the things you just mentioned about people being talked over, people's ideas being taken. I've seen all of that. It's uncomfortable, but sometimes you do have to do the uncomfortable thing and challenge it, and things gradually
it's really easy to challenge it without challenging it if you're not like a particularly confrontational person. So I know that you are not necessarily someone who likes confrontation. So the way that you could do it, for example, Chris, is you could be like, oh, actually, so-and-so had that really good idea the other day. Like, we should build on that. And it's a really nice, gentle way, rather than going, how dare you steal this? You can sort of just nod back to someone else. And it doesn't mean that you have to be really aggressive about it. It's small tweaks, and all of these small things. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And the whole kind of evolution, not revolution idea, right? You don't need to suddenly go 180 on someone.
I think it's calling things out is really good, and changing behaviors is really good, because people have unconscious bias, but there are ways that you can do it that suit you in this sort of atmosphere that you're in as well. So all the little things that add up.
And I think that's a really important point, is you need to be genuine to yourself as well while you're doing all of this, because if you're, I've said this before, I've said this on the channel, like I personally know I want to do a lot more on the channel with making sure that, whether you're white, black, whether you're male, female, whatever your beliefs, I want to make sure that people are represented on this channel. But what I don't want to do is do that in a way where it's not
performative.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be done the right way. It needs to be done for the right reasons. And just like that point there, I think you need to be genuine about what you're saying and the way you kind of get your points across, etc. as well. Otherwise, it's not really helping the cause either. It's if anything, it's going against it, I think.
Performative action is not great. But it's like I said, it's simple things. So like you doing this show and this podcast, you could very easily go, well, I've had an awful lot of this type of person on my show recently. I wonder what I could do to attract another, like this other demographic. It's not.
That's exactly something I've started looking at. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure I have a few networks I can hook you up.
Excellent. So I think this is probably a theme that we'll see cropping up as we carry on talking here as well. But I think one of the other pieces then, thinking about your journey through, is that you started off with John Lewis, you then went into the kind of agile space. So let's talk a bit about that. How did you kind of fall from and I guess I know some of the story, right? We've talked about this
Yeah.
before, but let's kind of talk out loud a bit about it. That you were doing a few rotations, you kind of trying out a few things, and you kind of found this world of process and agile, I guess, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I joined the partnership at exactly the right time because they were starting to look at changing the way they work. John Lewis are that really classic example of they have the first movers disadvantage. So they were one of the first companies in the country to have a proper .com website. So they were really cutting edge. And then they've just tacked on top of that, and then things have grown around it, and now it's a success failure. So roundabout when I was starting the graduate scheme, they were looking at doing their own big agile transformation. So then as part of my graduate scheme, we had to do different areas, and one of them was project management, because one of them is always project management. And that sort of got me into sort of the more agile ways of working stuff, which then meant I got to meet the glorious Dan North, who's one of the most crazy people on the planet, but he's fantastic. And he got my interest peaked a little bit because to me, it was something that just made sense. When he explained what Agile was and how it works and the different frameworks and tools that you can use, I was like, well, duh. And then, yeah, it just kept going from there. So I got my first bit of like formal Agile Coach training was within John Lewis, and that was with Liz Keogh, who taught me about Cynefin, and the most important thing was how to pronounce Cynefin, and that framework, and BDD and TDD and all of this sort of stuff. And then I moved into consultancy, and since then I just seem to hop around a lot, just seeing what I can do in places and what weird and wonderful and cool opportunities appear. So yeah, I've recently started an organization owned by Infosys called Wong Doody, which is one of the most fantastic names. You're not going to forget Wong Doody at all.
Nope.
It's also lime green as a branding exercise. It's memorable. And before I was at Automation Logic, and they're a DevOps specialist. So I picked up a lot of lingo that I don't necessarily know what it means, but I picked it up. And so awesome. Yeah, it's been a really weird and interesting journey. And I think the thing that's helped me succeed in this world is understanding that Agile it's not a Bible. I don't treat it like the cult that some people treat it like. It's a series of tools and frameworks. Yeah. And if you get to the heart of what it's about, and it's about helping people do the best work they can in the most enjoyable way possible, then everything else is kind of just additional to that.
Gotcha.
And that's the bit that people forget.
Gotcha. And I think this is interesting because, and we've spoken a bit about this before separately, but I think where I typically approach the whole DevOps kind of world from is more, even though you shouldn't, right? But the technology side, because of just what I do in my day-to-day, it is more technology, hands-on deployments into cloud platforms, etc. Whereas you'll be approaching it more from the process side. And that's the side I don't really get to see as much of. I get to see like the tools that kind of implement more of the management of stuff, but I don't really see kind of the process side of it as well, and the people side of it as well. And it's always interesting because it shouldn't be led that way. It isn't led that way, but that's just the slice of the world I see. So it's always interesting when we talk.
So what has been annoying me for a couple of years now is people throw Agile around as if it's a be-all and end-all word. And I've noticed it now happening with DevOps more and more. Oh, and what I'm really enjoying is we need to hire a DevOps. I'm like, a DevOps? It's a working process. What are you talking about? You don't hire a DevOps.
The thing that I really, really, really hate, and this is me where I wave my "this is Chris's opinion" flag at this point.
You're on your soapbox.
Exactly. I really hate the term a DevOps engineer. Like, you're part of a DevOps team because you're all doing, yes, you're a DevOps engineer in the sense that you're all kind of doing this role, you're developing the system, you're operating the system, etc. But when they say a DevOps engineer in our DevOps team, Okay, so you've got a DevOps team and you've got your development team and you've got your operations team. Tell me more about that, please.
There's a group I'm a part of on Discord called the Agile Water Cooler, and it's great. It's a global Agile group, and it's a bunch of people like me who are nerds. And someone popped in one day and was like, why would you do Agile if you're doing DevOps and vice versa? And one of the guys on there, he summed it up perfectly, where Agile is shortening the gap between development and the customer. DevOps is shortening the gap between development and operations. So really, you need both together. And I was like, oh yeah, no, thank you for succinctly trying to like I've been trying to explain this for a year, and he's just done it in half a second and 2 lines on a Discord chat. Like, thank you.
It's interesting. I think, just to jump in on that point, I think it's even that definition. There's so many definitions of what it is the problem, right? Like the stereotypical Microsoft one is the union of people, process, and product to deliver value to end users. That's the kind of stereotypical Microsoft definition. You can kind of see the blend of both of what you said in there, because they try to bring both in. But as you say, depending on who you ask, you get this different dictionary definition of what a DevOps is or an Agile is. And I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? There's so many definitions in the industry.
It's wonderful. I love, for a long time, I've watched people go, well, if we just put it in the cloud, and even I'm like, well, that's not going to fix anything. Like, it's just like moving your problem from one place to another place. So where it gets really interesting is like, okay, a lot of people think as DevOps is like the tooling. I'm like, great, but how is the tooling going to help me solve the problem that I have? Where is the problem and how do I fix the problem? And 9 times out of 10, the problem is either communication, or we have too many processes. So if you fix one of those 2 things, you're going to fix so many things further down the line. And it is as simple as that. I call myself an Agile coach, and half of the time I feel like a psychologist.
So tell me more about
this
that.
this far away from doing a psych degree.
Excellent.
I think it would be very useful.
Awesome. So then, for anyone who's looking to get started in that space, they need to be, have that psychology background, is what I'm hearing. Okay, cool.
I'm currently in the process of potentially hiring a Scrum Master from my team to sit with me. And I was talking to our internal recruiter, and I went, look, I don't really necessarily want someone who has been a Scrum Master. Actually, if you've got an office manager who's changing careers, I'll take them. Because fundamentally, they have what I need is someone who is organized and someone who cares about the people that they are working with. And if you've got those 2 things and you have the ability to learn the rest of it, that you will be a really good Scrum Master, moving to Agile Coach, etc. So I think the best Scrum Masters I've ever seen have been graduates straight out of university who know nothing and have no shame in asking really stupid sounding questions. Because that's kind of the job.
And let's be fair, right? I think this is something that I'm seeing a lot of people reflect on recently, actually, no matter where they are in terms of the industry, whether they are consultants or engineer or whatever their role is, whether they've been in industry 20 years, 10 years, 2 minutes. I'm seeing a lot of people kind of realize that, hey, this whole industry is moving so quickly that actually it is okay to ask questions. It is okay to not know everything. And I think that's a really welcome change. There's still a way to go. But I can see a lot of people breaking down that kind of mental barrier of that. Do you see the same happening in kind of the Agile space and that flexibility of wanting to change and wanting to do things? Or is there still almost a barrier there, would you say?
It depends who you talk to. The point of Agile is the ability to change. That's kind of why it was called Agile, as a way of working. So it's in the manifesto, it's in the principles, it's in the core part of the Agile way of thinking is responding to change. It's why we don't do 3-year-long infrastructure projects all planned out with milestones. So we're a part of the industry that's actually set up for the fact that the world sort of went like that overnight, and we're locked in a house. So no, I don't think much has really changed for us in terms of how Agile coaches fundamentally view what we do. What has changed is we're getting more people interested in what we do.
Gotcha.
And that's, I think, where we're getting so much misunderstanding, that it's not just the person who runs your daily stand-up. And I'm not a pseudo project manager. And honestly, I really half the time understand maybe a third of what my team are doing, but I don't need to understand it anyway. So don't ask me the questions.
Yeah.
Ask them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's where it's changed has been more people more interested in the work. Questions are core to what I do on a daily basis. I do spend more of my time asking people why we do things the way we do them, and if we could do it in a better way.
Gotcha.
Because I'm a coach. That's what coaches do.
Yeah. Exactly. It's all about asking people those probing questions, helping them discover what they already know, but they haven't quite wanted to ask the question for.
So I've noticed we plan everything to the nth degree for the next like 7 weeks. Why do we do that?
Oh, because we always have.
We've always done this. Okay, so what would happen if we didn't do that?
World will end.
The world will end. Do you know, some people really hate us.
I can say this because it's you. It's like
really annoying.
I wasn't going to say quite like that, but your words, not mine. But
you've
like
never been in a room full of agile coaches all trying to do a piece of work.
But it's like that kid in the corner, like, why are we doing that? Why? Come on, tell me why.
But Chris, why?
Exactly, and I can imagine you doing that. No, got it.
I'm the annoying but mostly fun one.
Again, I can vouch for that. But I think it's no mistake, right? When you look at what is happening in the industry, and you look at, let's say, the last 10 years that I think cloud has really kind of started emerging, maybe 15 for the early days. It's no real surprise, I think, that you're starting to see this interest of people wanting to kind of go on that journey, because if they don't get on that journey, all of the benefits of things like cloud with Chris, we got to bring it in somewhere. All of those benefits, you don't really gain the true realization of those, because you're still just doing what you did in the old world, doing it the old way, being a laggard in that kind of space and not really moving along. Whereas there are so many opportunities that you could innovate and do new things, and to do that, you need to be able to react to that change. You need to be able to go and be agile. You know,
yeah. I think that used to be, if we put all of our stuff on a cloud that's looked after Microsoft or Amazon or Google, it's more reliable because we don't have to look after it. And that's what it used to be. It was a reliability thing. Now it's like, when we have a sudden Christmas peak, we can spin it up. And then it went into, well, if we can just expand it, does that mean we can? And that's where containerization and, let's drop in a few extra teams and build out multiple environments and kill them. And that's where it gets really interesting. And I think we're at a real tipping point for organizations where if they don't, cloud will not solve everyone's problems, because a lot of it is organizational structure.
Yeah.
But even if you fix the organizational structure and you have the underlying bad infrastructure that's been around since 1982, you can't do anything then.
Yeah, it's a two-part problem, isn't it? Like, you've got access to the platform where you can go ahead and you can, scale, as you rightly said, right? You've got the Christmas peak coming up, scale, go crazy. But if your organizational processes have got so much red tape around them that you need to have that sign off 6 months in advance, and you don't even know what your business is going to look like in 6 months' time because of this whole COVID pandemic thing hitting.
Yeah. My favorite one is also, let's move everything to the cloud in a agile but not agile way. So it's agile, and we're going to pretend it's agile because we're doing stand-ups, but it's done in a waterfall planning manner.
I have a term for that.
It's is it fragile, wagile, or water scrumful?
It was Agile.
I actually like water scrumful because you've got you've got all of your upfront planning, financial stuff. Then you have Scrum delivery. Then you have operations, waterfall. So it's water scrumful.
I'd like water scrumful because I kind of see this idea of it kind of going like that, but like loads of little spirals along the way. Exactly.
Yeah. And actually, this is one of the statements that people love me making, is semi-controversial coming from an Agile coach. Moving everything from your on premises server stack and putting it into the cloud may be best suited in a waterfall way. You do not put the foundations of a house in bit by bit while you figure it out.
Okay, that's fair. I get your logic.
So there it shouldn't be a 3-year program, but I wouldn't necessarily do loads of iterative infrastructure building for your initial like port.
Yeah, you need a clear plan as you're going in, and the way you deliver it could be agile in a sense, but you need a clear idea of what you're going to achieve before you get there.
I'm really worried that I'm going to have the international community of Agile coaches remove my credentials from saying that. But so there's nothing fundamentally wrong with Waterfall. It's fundamentally, it can work. Often it doesn't, but it can work. And if it is working, what is the point in changing it? And this is where I'm not a purist.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the point, right? Going back to I guess the aspect we were mentioning earlier, the world is changing. Things are getting released more quickly. We as end users are expecting more. And the thing is, what if we go down the waterfall approach, right? We were in a world where 3 years ahead of time, we've put a project plan out. We're going to deliver on that project plan. But now we're 3 years behind and we've got to start a new project straight up to go and do what our users want now and do the same thing again, same problem. So yeah. I think that's the difference, isn't it? Is that foundation piece that you mentioned isn't really going to change in those. Of course, it will change, but it's not going to be so substantial like the requirements of like the application or whatever it may be that might go ahead and change over that time and how we want to adjust things.
You build something with the ability to grow, exactly. and when you build it, and I say build at this point, some of it is process. When you create your process for moving to cloud, understanding that in 12 months time your requirements might be different, but you can still plan this in a more strategic way. I think where I've seen organizations struggle is what they do is I'm gonna say that they spin up an AWS area and they just move the stuff straight onto it.
I understand.
Yeah. So I had a lot of AWS, but what they do is they just spin things up and then copy paste. I'm like, but and this is what I mean. You've literally moved a problem. You've not actually solved anything.
Yep. You've just expected some different machines running the same stuff, going and solving your problems. How exactly? Help me understand. And I guess maybe let's go down that path a little bit there, because you mentioned about themes you're seeing or trends you're seeing. Are there any others that you're seeing? Because I guess we kind of partly steered into the technology space from it. Let's steer back purely into the agile space, and think about some of the things you're seeing there, because I guess it could be interesting for those who are on their cloud journey. For example, they're thinking about some of the technical transformations they need to go through, but actually there's this whole organizational transformation they need to go through as well. So what are the common pitfalls, maybe some of the things that you could go, I know you're probably going to make that mistake as you go along?
So just because someone's done a 2-day course does not make them a Scrum Master. It is my favorite one. I have seen a lot of people come into teams as a Scrum Master and they then assign work to people. And that is not how it works. The most common pitfall that I see is people thinking that it's another Prince 2, and it's not. It is not telling you how to manage a piece of work. What Scrum.org, and I'm talking specifically about Scrum because Agile is a much bigger thing right now, but Scrum is the most commonly used Agile aspect. And what people will do is they'll look at it and assume this manages a piece of work perfectly, exactly as planned, and they forget the point of it is to allow the people who are closest to the work, i.e. the development team, to make the best choices. I don't know how senior your audience are, and I may offend some of them right now, but once you get to a certain level, you are so far removed from the work, you really need to trust your juniors, so just shut up and listen to them. And that is a big issue. I've seen people who have succeeded in their career in an old way of working where everything was really well planned in advance, and they could know the minutia of what was going on in all of their projects, and you cannot do that anymore. If you are a C-suite or a head of trying to micromanage everything being done below you, you are going to fall over because there is a lack of trust, which is all the core Scrum thing. Yep. And there's a lack of empowerment, which is a core Agile thing. And that is the biggest pitfall. Also, don't assume that by moving to this new way of working, everyone is going to like it as well. A lot of people don't like working in Scrum teams because it feels messy and chaotic. And it is messy and chaotic because that is the world that we live in. But that's why it's that way. If everything was really predictable, we wouldn't need to work like this.
Yeah, I was just trying to think, modeling the world. Just trying to think of a nice little tagline, but I haven't quite got it yet. But I like the analogy there, though, that it is effectively just a chaotic world, and you're trying to put a model around that chaos, really, aren't you?
Yeah, like who knew that the biggest? Actually, I was going to say who knew that the biggest requirement for this year was going to be the good solid internet. I'm like, well, Jeremy Corbyn did, which is why he wanted to nationalize the internet. And it's things like this, like something changes suddenly. What happens when the next big global, I don't want to say pandemic because it might not be a pandemic, but and the next big global event happens that changes the way that we work and the focus on it as well. Like, who knows, it's going to be solar flares and suddenly the internet works 3 hours a day. Then what do we do?
Oh no.
And that is the point of this way of working, is to enable people to make the best decisions at the time. And a lot of people find it really uncomfortable, especially if they're not someone who's naturally open to change anyway. So with my current place, we're looking at how we can work with new customers and new clients. And one of the things I really want to champion as part of the way that we do Agile transformations to this way of working is I want mental health first aiders involved in the process, because people don't like change.
Yep.
And they've got a group of consultants coming in and telling them we're going to change how you work and change your teams and change all of that, and it's going to make them uncomfortable, and they never want to talk to me because I'm an outsider. So can we just get some mental health first aiders on site so they can go talk to them instead?
Yep.
And it's things like this that are the most common pitfall is people assume it's a process change and you're actually trying to change hearts and minds and culture, and that is one of the most difficult things you can do, which is why I still talk about women in tech. Why do we need women in tech events? This is why, because culture is difficult to change.
Yep.
And it's exactly the same thing when you're changing a working culture. If you've had a company where it's been micromanaged for years and then suddenly you tell people that they can make their own decisions, they're not going to.
No.
They're not going to want to. So yeah, it's a battle, and it will not be done in 6 months. And if you have a consultancy come in and say in 6 months' time you're going to be perfectly agile, don't hire them.
No. And it's interesting. Actually, there was kind of an aha moment as you were speaking and explaining there, that we mentioned before we went live, the rough kind of topics we were going to navigate around and talk around. And I think we've roughly done that as we've gone through. Roughly stayed on track. But actually the link between, as you say, women in tech and between Agile is actually, there is a very, very big link there. The ability to deal with change, the ability to actually make that culture shift. There is a big link, and I hadn't really myself put that link together, and actually you saying that made it for me. So thank you for saying that. Women are generally assumed to be better at soft skills. Now, the reason there's some confirmation bias there, where if you're told from the age of dot that you're really good at soft skills stuff, you're going to learn to be really good at soft skills stuff, and then sort of confirm this assumption, and it's going to keep going. But it's working in our favor right now, because
everything that I do is soft skill stuff. So I've got this, and that's not to say that there aren't like incredibly good and talented male agile coaches. I've been taught by a few, but I see more women in my job.
Interesting.
The women in Agile London group is massive. The women in Agile Global group is massive. So this is where us being pushed into secretarial roles all of our lives and HR roles all our lives, it's suddenly like, oh yeah, now you're gonna listen to us.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Again, that's not a world I'm really exposed to, right? The kind of agile ratio of women versus men working in the industry there. But looking in my neck of the woods with engineering, etc., it's the flip side. And I think it's that same thing again, right? You're brought up, oh, we got to solve problems, we got to go and do this, and there are those very core belief systems, I guess, that are kind of built up, right? That you have to kind of start challenging a bit, and it comes back to, I think, agile and being able to deal with that change and all these things. So it's opening my mind actually to thinking about how all of these things come together. I'm doing a lot of processing right now. I'm not quite sure where I go with my processing, but I
struggle with my job. I really do, because I went and got my haircut today, and she was like, "So what do you do?" I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to someone who doesn't work in the industry. When I first met my other half, like properly, we were in a pub, like at a big social meetup, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I just went, "Please don't make me explain it." And I'm like, I've had enough. You won't get it. I don't want to explain it. I've been in a conference all day where I've had to explain it. Please don't make me explain it. What do you do? And he went, "Oh, I'm a front end developer." I'm like, "Oh, you will get my job."
You might get it. Yeah.
Because I'm running out of ways to explain what I do to people outside of the IT industry. So my current one is I help teams work better as teams. And that's all I've got. And when people are like, "So how does that work?" I'm like, "Badly right now." It's really hard remotely. I use body language a lot, and all I see is like from here upwards. I don't know what's going on with people.
And it does make a big difference. Like you and I, this is fairly natural in the sense we've known each other for 11 years, right? So, there are things we've picked up over that time that we can still kind of infer from what we're chatting here. But like where you're meeting people for the first time, as you have done going into a new team, as I have done now going into a new team, it's tough. It's so tough.
Yeah, this is the second job I've started remotely in a lockdown.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that before, and you like a challenge. You like a challenge.
It's anyone doing hiring right now, really feel for the people who are trying to onboard remotely, because they're going to take twice as long. Because it's amazing how much you learn in a company in the first 2 weeks when you just hang around in the kitchen, which, as you know, as a tea addict, is my favorite place to be. And I can't do that anymore. It's hard to find out who my people are. Where are my other Marvel nerds? Where are my climbing folks? Where even just who's my new work wife? Because I haven't met her yet. And it's really difficult onboarding remotely.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare as a consultant, because I'm coming into my company new, and then my client new, and I don't know my company team on the client site, and I don't know the client either. So
it's a lot of unknown.
Agile Coach has been a really fun year and a half.
A lot of unknown.
Thank God for web conferencing technology, because honestly, it's been, I think Among Us and Scribbler and all of these various online games have been the solution.
I didn't know you were playing Among Us.
Yeah, we were playing with one of my old teams. We used to play a lot, and I freaked all of my graduates out at how easy it was for me to lie to them.
We'll have to play sometime. It's been a while since I've played again, but we'll have to play.
I think they've upgraded it as well, so yeah.
And there was actually an announcement at E3 that it's coming to Xbox as well, which is quite exciting.
So I just want the next Breath of the Wild, so that's my most important thing right now.
I'm looking forward to the new Sea of Thieves coming out. Well, not new Sea of Thieves, but a new season
crashed the boat. And we couldn't
Yes,
figure out how I
yes,
crashed the boat. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
it was that. I
See,
forgot I showed it to you.
my bad technology like goes
Yes.
straight into video games as well.
Oh, well, it's quite fun. They announced a partnership with Disney at E3, so they're Pirates of the Caribbean. So
Yeah.
they're now bringing Johnny Depp, and not Johnny Depp, but Jack Sparrow. I think apparently they've got a different voice artist. I've been reading in the news, but yeah, just interesting how they're kind of bringing those worlds together. It's going to be quite interesting. It comes out next week. So,
Cool.
in fact, actually, by the time this is out, it'll be out. So,
Oh, I'll check in with you and see how it's going and see how long it is before I can come visit and crash the boat.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, conscious that we've been going for about 3/4 of an hour, so let's start kind of wrapping ourselves up. If you were doing this all again, if you were going down the path of Agile, what would be the things that you wish you knew before you kind of started getting going? What would maybe the things you maybe not done differently, but maybe have thought, okay, this is maybe something that I need to do first kind of scenario?
Do you know what? I'm quite happy with the way I've done things, which has been chaotic and unplanned.
Sure.
Well, yeah. I was talking about this recently. I've never actually planned my career. I tend to just follow what looks interesting. Where I am right now, I'm gonna potentially grow their agile capability, and this looks interesting. We'll see how that goes. And I think that has kind of worked for me. If someone was starting today and was asking me for advice, the only piece of advice I would give them is there's so many different books and blogs and certifications and courses, and take everything, literally everything, with a pinch of salt, and don't expect to know all of it. At Automation Logic, we had this thing for our developers called a career development wheel. So rather than a career progression, it showed all of your skills in a radial graph in a circle. So I did one for myself on agile skills, and I have some really low points, and I'm okay with it. I've decided I can't know it all.
Yep.
And that's where, whenever I start pulling in teams of people, I understand that while I'm good at all of this stuff, I need someone who's really good with Jira and metrics, because I don't like it.
Compliment you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's okay, because my job touches on organization and processes and people, and like, I joke about it, but in a way, sometimes counseling and client management and stakeholder. And there's so much to this career that you can kind of really make your own path in it. And I think that's why I like it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been fun, and I get to focus on the things that I enjoy, and that's playing with Lego and Post-it notes and Sharpie pens. Yeah.
Sign me up.
Oh yeah, come join
Awesome.
us. Can you do the Jira metric stuff that I always break?
I don't use Jira so much, but I'm sure I could pick it up. Sure, I can pick it up.
I'm fairly certain, like, the DevOps boards does the same thing. I just don't know where the button is.
Like the burn downs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Love a good cumulative flow diagram.
Oh, absolutely. So, final thing before I wrap us up. I know we spoke before about you were kind of putting a blog together, you were doing bits and pieces, so really just an opportunity. Was there anything you wanted to kind of do a shout out on? Because I know you were doing the kind of conference speaking before everything happened with the world. So was there anything you wanted to kind of call out for the listeners while we're here?
I have no major pitches right now, which is fun. I actually don't have any major conferences lined up, but I am hopefully going to be starting my own pod at some point in the near future. So I'll let you know when that happens.
Cool.
Which is not just agile. I think it's a little bit of everything, just fun and interesting and stuff like that. So I met someone who's doing their thesis on radical uncertainty, and I'm adamant that I'm going to have them come on and explain that to me, because that just sounds fascinating and very applicable. So yeah, it'll be Erin's Adventures in, and hopefully I can get that started this summer, assuming all of this sound stuff has actually functioned today.
Awesome. I've picked it up loud and clear, and I can see that OBS seems to have done, so fingers crossed. Well, this is our dry run. There we go. But no, I love the idea. Erin's Adventures in. And I think maybe as a bit of sharing my thoughts for anyone else who's listening in and thinking I want to start my own podcast or I want to kind of do something like this. Honestly, I went on a live stream maybe a month ago, 6 to 8 weeks ago, but we were talking about blogging, but this can apply to content creation in general. Honestly, just start. You will do something, you will hate it, you will find holes and things that you hate about the way that you speak, the way that you breathe, the way that you, whatever it is. But it's so fun. It's such a fun ride. Like, I've been doing this now for 15, 16 months. Properly, the last 6 months, I've really had a proper schedule and everything I'm working towards. And you learn so much. You meet so many great people. You get to meet some old people you know already, I guess, and that's kind of okay, I suppose. But there's so much that you learn and you pick up on, and you get to share it all with people as you go as well. And it's just a lot of fun. So you're in for a good ride.
Well, thankfully I've been a guest on enough of these that I'm pretty used to how my voice sounds to other people. So that bit shan't be too much of a shock. But I'm looking forward to watching the chaos unfold as I try and do editing. Well,
there we go. I mean, like we've said, being an Agile coach, you're pretty much in the chaos. So it's just, there we go.
I'm going to set up a board.
There we go. Full circle. There we go. That's our first sprint done. On to the next one. So, Erin, thank you so much for joining. It's been a lot of fun. I think probably as chaotic as we expected. Probably could have been more chaotic, but maybe we'll do another one.
There's been no four-legged interruptions from either of us.
I know. I was surprised. I was expecting Ollie to appear somewhere at one point.
He's currently slinking around over there, and the other one is completely dead to the world.
There we go.
So it's all good.
Well, that's good. When you start recording your pods, you'll just have no disturbing. So that's good. Awesome. Thank you for joining, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So there we go, folks. That was a session all about Agile, women in IT, many other topics here that have just escaped my brain, and I'm certainly going to be listening back to that one because I think sometimes when you're kind of in the discussion mode with these sessions, you're kind of listening to things but also trying to keep the discussion going. But there was a lot in there to pull out and digest. So really great session. Thank you, Erin, for joining. A lot of fun as always. I'm looking forward to catching up again soon. So you know what to do, folks. If you like this session, please go ahead, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you know as soon as there's new content, and of course subscribe so you can keep up to date with everything that's coming on the channel as well. And of course, it's not just all about YouTube. There's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and cloudwithchris.com, where you can go and listen to the content and read the transcript in real time as well. Or you could go ahead and read a blog while you're on there as well if you prefer. Many different ways you can go and consume content. So with that, thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy, and until the next one, bye for now.